today's day one of what's ultimately kind of a brief campaign. It's not, too long or belabored, anything like that. Going into your bid for a third term, I mean, how do things change up from the first two times? I mean, what are the feelings that a third term seeking mayor has?
Well, really looking forward to the next 4 years. This is unquestionably the golden age of our city's history. It's built on a foundation of 30 years of vision and investment that our community has made, and I was honored and blessed to get to take that baton 8 years ago. I mean, when you think about the next 4 years, we've got the completion of MAPS 4, we've got major implementation of the nearly $3 billion bond issue we just passed. We've got 7 events of the 2028 Summer Olympics. We've got the opening of our new $1 billion arena. A lot of exciting things, and that's why I, was more than happy to re-up and continue to serve. It's been the honor of my life to serve as mayor, and I'm looking forward to this next chapter.
It'd be kind of a disappointment not to be in the same spot come 2028, which is going to be a very exciting year.
Right. Well, as it turns out, you spend a few years kind of putting a lot of these things into place, and you do kind of want to see them to the finish line. And you also recognize that it's not as if other people who don't have the background with these issues and with this process can just step in and do that. I mean, you also have a bit of an obligation to see it through. It's not just for you and your own, satisfaction. It's also kind of becomes a necessity that the job isn't done, and it's your obligation to finish it.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the past 4 years for you, what have been the defining issues, do you feel like? And when you look at the office of the mayor for the next 4 years, what do you expect will be the moments that require the mayor to rise up and meet them?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the major issues of the last 4 years, of course, was securing our long-term status as a major league sports city. That was clearly at risk when our lease expired and we didn't have the infrastructure in place to secure a long-term arrangement. So we as a community embarked upon a multi-year conversation to address that, and now we have a relationship with the Thunder till at least 2053, and we know that something that has become pretty fundamental to our city, our status as a big league city, is secure. So that was one obviously major issue of the last 4 years. Another was far and away, the largest commitment to core infrastructure that we've ever made, $2.7 billion. Overwhelming passage of that, anywhere from 76 to 85%. Great validation, obviously, of our direction here as a city. That's a multi-year process to develop, present, and pass something of that magnitude to the people of Oklahoma City. Of course, spent a lot of time in the last 4 years finishing the work of securing the Olympics for Oklahoma City. That was ultimately a 6 or 7 year odyssey just to get to the point where it's official and we're really doing this. And so certainly a lot of that fell into my last term. There's a million other things, right? I mean, it's every day is a new adventure. But those are some of the highlights that I think people will recall. Moving forward into the next 4 years, we've got implementation of so many of these things: the arena, the Olympics, the bond issue. MAPS 4, of course, is kind of right in its sweet spot now, and you'll see so many ribbons being cut over these next 4 years. We're going to have a conversation most likely about transit, public transit, and as the city grows, which is when one of the major outcomes of an increased quality of life over these last 30 years, we're going to see traffic increase, we're going to see density increase, and what are we doing as a community? I mean, we've already been doing that work, but are we ready as a community to take the next step into a commitment towards regional public transit? I think that'll be a major conversation over the next several years. We'll continue to work on the core issues. 2/3 of our budget now into the future and always have been goes towards public safety. So making sure that we continue to focus on one of the core functions of our city government, working on rising issues that also come along with growth, like homelessness and others. And just, of course, I've always focused a lot as mayor and just keeping, of course, our unity as a city, including all of the communities within our city, and that work will continue. I mean, we maybe take that for granted now, but 8 years ago, that was kind of a new day, the one OKC philosophy that I brought to City Hall. And so maintaining that is also important. So it's a little bit of continuation and it's a little bit of new challenges, but the work of building a city is never done, and there'll be plenty to do over the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm. In 2022, you got a historic joint endorsement from the police and fire unions, and they've been very supportive of you. This year has been just a slightly interesting year. There was obviously a little bit of a budget cut that had to be made, and in my own conversations with the union leaders, none of them seemed super broken up about it, perhaps just a small hiccup. But City Manager Freeman, I know, has described the sluggish sales tax revenue growth, less than obviously what city leaders would probably aspire for. So on the budget side and the financial side, what would you describe are obviously the ambitions to be in a different place in the future, and perhaps the plan to maybe catalyze a change in those sales tax numbers, and to ultimately, I would assume, to unfreeze some of the positions that unfortunately had to be frozen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, where we're looking at right now, budget-wise, appears to be what's come in kind of in the first half of the fiscal year, which is where we sit now. Looks to be about on budget, but maybe that not where we wish it would be. It is, when I say on budget, that means it's where we predicted it to be, but of course we always aspire to more, and that's what drives a lot of the work we do, is just continuing to build the economy. Obviously we're relying on sales tax, so we're looking to build the commercial and economy and the retail activity that drives our budget. It's always worth noting in these conversations that we're the only state in the United States that is solely relies upon sales tax at the municipal level for our operations. So that is naturally the most of all of the tax options, revenue options, that is the most volatile, right? That goes up and down, even month to month, right? And so it can present challenges. Obviously, over time, we have seen that dramatically increase. I mean, my first stint at City Hall was as the mayor's chief of staff 15 years ago, and at that time, 1 penny raised about $100 million a year. Now 1 penny of sales tax raises $150 million a year. So certainly the long-term trend is positive. But yeah, I mean, that's the work of city management every day, every month, every year, is to manage the volatility of that revenue stream, and to make sure that we've got as much as we possibly can for the core functions of our government. Again, especially the operational side. We're pretty well resourced after all of these votes in terms of the capital side, especially relative to our history, because we used to go through decades where we didn't pass any bond issues or capital sales taxes. But now we've got that in a pretty decent place. I mean, you can always have more, but I think, yeah, certainly operational will continue to work on that. I think what's different now, and you have to go back almost 20 years to see what I'm talking about, but what's different now in terms of our relationship with the FOP and the fire union is that there's a lot of trust there, there's a lot of transparency. That doesn't mean that we always agree or that we're not frustrated by some of the challenges that we mutually share. But I do think people at least are talking to each other and understand some of the obstacles in our way. It doesn't relieve the frustration sometimes, but at the end of the day, the city government can only pay for what it has the resources to fund. And so those are a never-ending negotiation, literally, because they're every single year under state law that we have to renegotiate those contracts. So one is finished and the next negotiation begins. And that's all, to me, after having been at City Hall on and off for 20 years, that's all just sort of the normal stuff, right? I mean, and the good news is, I'd say over these last 8 years, it's been a lot less dramatic and a lot more transparent and a lot less filled with tension than it was 20 years ago. These relationships are a lot better, and a lot better on a human level than they once were. Long before your time, but like the unions fought MAPS 3, like with a funded campaign. That was the kind of things that was happening 20 years ago, but there's been a lot of collaboration ever since.
Mm-hmm. Still on the subject of public safety, you've been very outspoken about community violence intervention programs. I know that you recently joined Live Free for their new relaunch at Innovation Hall. Obviously, the city and the county and most of the country, as you know, as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, is celebrating a reduction for most major cities in violent crime, property crime, and such. Some statistical critics argue that it's not quite back to where it is nationally before the COVID-19 pandemic. But when you look at the violence reduction statistics, when you look at the intervention programs that are in place, both from community partners that you've supported, from the city police department, from other law enforcement partners, what inspires you with some of the changes that have been made there?
Yeah, I think that we're on the cutting edge of violence prevention, and I think that's why you're seeing, it's just one indicator, but I mean, our current homicide rate, even with some that have occurred in the last few weeks, is still at near record levels per capita, and record low levels per capita. And you know, we have, 2 years ago, we saw a 20% drop in homicides. It's been flat for the couple years after that. And then this year, the book is still open, but for much of the year, we've been pretty significantly down, and for much of the year, as much as 20% down. So what I always explain is, if you get the emails every time somebody's murdered in Oklahoma City like I do, you see that homicides occur, and really most acts of violence occur between people who knew each other in private places that are not being, you know, immediately and directly patrolled by the police department. So yes, you need to have a police presence. There's lots of reasons for that. Police and law enforcement are a major aspect of public safety, but you also have to recognize that most acts of violence are occurring in living rooms and driveways between people who know each other. That they are not happening in some open public space that has a police officer standing there. So you have to also have these programs that are preventing violence and intervening in violence, not 5 minutes before the act, but months and years before the act. So you think about, it's not just Live Free, Palomar, the diversion hub, like these are all investments ultimately in breaking cycles in violence intervention and prevention. And I would say the sum total of all of that, and you could also expand that same philosophy and say that youth centers and other things like that are part of the same formula. And when you look at the long-term trend in Oklahoma City, I mean, you have to say that that's working, and I think that philosophy has been widely adopted around the country as well. And so when you look at the national trends right now, I think you'd have to, if you want to pin it on something, I think it would be this this more multifaceted approach to crime, and understanding that when we're calling 911, like we're at the last resort. We're way past the point where we could have intervened or prevented this, and we should be also operating at those earlier points in the spectrum as well.
Now, the county jail is certainly not your issue, and it's not your project, and you're not in charge. But whoever occupies this office for the next 4 years is certainly going to have to contend with some major developments on that front. And you're going to be looked at as a thought leader, probably too, by a lot of people, a lot of voters who are going to be asked for their opinion on it. I won't ask you to make a judgment on what's right or wrong, but it's going to be probably tumultuous because there's not a clear plan right now, and time's kind of becoming more and more urgent. How do you see you as a mayor, obviously, who's not in charge of the project, threading the needle with questions from the public, concerns about what becomes of this jail, and what are we going to do, and how are we going to fund it, and what are we going to do about the current jail before the new one's built? How do we talk about that as a community?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is and has always been is that there is no role for city government in that conversation. We don't have a vote. We don't get invited to the meetings. It's not our deal, right? Like, and so I think the only role we have traditionally held is once there is some kind of plan, which is, again, created in a room we're not a part of, you know, we might, as high-profile citizens and people that voters trust, weigh in and say what we think about that plan. And I did do that a few years ago, you know. I mean, I was just thrilled that the county had a plan finally. And obviously it's turned out to be an inadequate dollar amount, but at the time it was the first plan that they had presented in many years. And so I did support that. But at this point, again, you're outside the room, so you're kind of left to wait and see what plan develops. And I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the mayor and other people who have the best interest of the city at heart will issue some sort of opinion on that. But until such day arrives, I'm an observer, and it's impossible to like sort of weigh in on the debate of the day happening, which is essentially something I'm just reading in the paper or watching on the news like everybody else. So we just don't have a role. But when the day comes that a plan should emerge, and I certainly hope one does, I'm sure we'll render an opinion. But and of course, I'm always willing to be a part of the solution at a deeper level. But there's 3 county commissioners. They get elected by their constituents. They have a lot of pride in their role in this, and they have yet to call me. But I don't think that's unusual. I mean, like, they have their responsibilities. I don't call them to figure out how we're going to keep the thunder here. I have my responsibilities, right? So we all play our part, and it certainly is something that I care about as a person who lives in this community. But I really don't have a role any more than somebody off the street. But when the day comes, I hope that a plan is presented. I'm sure I'll take a close look at it, just like everybody else should.
And as you noted at the beginning, you do have an opponent. We're learning about him still. What kind of campaign do you expect to run? I mean, what is this? Does the playbook look different than the first or second time? Do you just dust it off and do it again? I mean,
well, sure it does. I mean, the first time you run, you're introducing yourself, right? The second time, we had funded opponents with TV ads and nail pieces, and so it was a little different. You sit here today, it's 8 years. Your campaign is your body of work at this point. If you're in a position where you're trying to convince people to continue to have you in this role, that might mean that you haven't done a great job. But the reality here is, my initiatives have gotten, 72% for MAPS 4, 71% for the arena, as high as 85% for the bond issue. We recently had our citizen survey, which showed 72% of voters feel that we're heading in the right direction. There's a little bit of a recurring theme there, right? We're working with a strong majority of the city of 70% to 80% who believe in our direction, and certainly the mayor is more than associated with the direction of the city. So I think at this point the campaign is the body of work. It's an election in February, so certainly we will make some efforts to remind people to vote, because it's not November, it's a standalone election. There will be some school board seats maybe, but otherwise not a lot happening on that date. So certainly there's a little bit of just kind of get out the vote reminding that we'll be doing, I think, in the days leading up to the election. But no, I think it is a little different when you don't have funded serious opposition, or you don't have the necessity to introduce yourself. At this point, you're kind of standing on your record, and I'm very proud of my record, and I think that the people of Oklahoma City have shown time and time again that they are as well.
Mm-hmm. A lot of pundits call you someone who's, like a bridge builder, brings people together, not too deeply political. In your role with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, obviously recently you came together to make a stand against political violence, to try to bridge divides and such. How does that continue to shape sort of your political philosophy? Obviously the mayor's office is a nonpartisan office and such, but people nationally now look at you as a thought leader on these issues in what people call trying times.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the only way to serve, and I don't think it has to be just limited to mayor's offices. I think everybody at the state and federal levels should be thinking more about a nonpartisan style. People know that I'm a Republican. I served in the state Senate for 8 years as a Republican. I served in the White House of President Bush. That's still a part of my identity, but I recognize that I represent all 712,000 people of Oklahoma City, regardless of their ideological views, and that the only way for us to move forward as a community is to find the compromises and the most effective and broadest, most widely supported outcomes across the 70% of people in the middle that I kind of talked about earlier, right? We keep getting 70+% for everything. kind of demonstrates that we're achieving that. We're not really chasing one extreme or the other. We're working with the 70% of kind of normal Republicans, Democrats, and independents in our city who just want to work together to get things done, and they're willing to compromise. They don't have to get exactly the outcome that they might desire. They understand since kindergarten that like you have to give in a little bit, and that's really kind of the only way for any community to function, whether it's a city, a state, or a country. So I love this work, but I think I would serve that way at any level. I don't think it has to be unique to cities, but certainly that's the world in which I inhabit today, and I am the president of all the mayors, so I try to, hold up our ethos that I think is actually pretty broadly utilized across American cities by mayors of all parties, and certainly the Oklahoma City Declaration, which has now been signed by over 230 mayors, I think reflects that. But I wish that, I think we just try to lead by example, and we wish that people at the state and federal levels would emulate us. We're certainly not going to emulate them. We get things done here in Oklahoma City, and we get things done in American cities more broadly.
What do you wish that I asked you?
I don't know. I mean, I think you've covered it pretty well. It's a good question, though. But yeah, looking back, looking forward, that's kind of what you do at moments like this. So.